He smiled that day, and nothing about it looked strange. It wasn't forced or shaky. It didn't look like the smile of someone who was breaking inside. It looked normal, and that was the problem. The most dangerous smiles never look sad. They don't tremble or beg for help. They don't warn anyone. They blend in so perfectly that they give everyone around them permission to stop worrying. People saw him and felt relieved. Good, he's fine. That single smile erased suspicion, silenced concern, and allowed life to move on as usual. He walked past people like he always did. Someone waved at him, and he waved back. Someone cracked a joke, and he laughed. When someone asked the question we all ask without really listening, "Are you okay?" he gave the answer people love to hear. "Yeah. I'm good." 2 simple words, convincing enough to end the conversation. And just like that, everyone moved on, because deep down, most people don't actually want the real answer. Have you ever smiled because telling the truth felt like too much work? Have you ever said, "I'm fine," not because you were, but because you didn't want to become a burden? Have you ever realized that being strong can slowly make you invisible? That was him. He had perfected the art of looking okay, not because he was okay, but because he learned early on that pain makes people uncomfortable. Smiles don't scare people. Smiles don't demand time. Smiles don't require follow-up questions. And that day, he smiled better than he ever had. What nobody knew was that this smile wasn't hiding pain anymore. It was hiding a decision. A quiet decision. A tired one. A decision made after too many nights of staring at the ceiling, wondering why breathing felt heavier than living. The signs were there, but they were the kind of signs we only recognize when it's already too late. Extra kindness, unexpected calls, longer hugs, gentler words. The things we call nice in the moment, only to later realize they were goodbyes. People would eventually say, "He laughed that day. He was in a good mood. He didn't look depressed." Exactly. That's why this story matters. Because sometimes the end doesn't come with warnings. Sometimes it comes with a smile. And by the time we understand what that smile really meant, we're standing in silence, replaying moments we once thought were ordinary. This isn't a story about weakness. It's a story about exhaustion, the kind sleep can't fix, the kind rest doesn't touch, the kind that quietly builds inside people who are always there for others but never feel truly seen themselves. They called him strong. Not because life was easy for him, but because he never complained. He was the one people leaned on, the one who always said, "Don't worry, it'll be fine." He listened more than he talked, and when he did talk, he made people laugh. What no one realized was that his strength had slowly become his prison. Once people see you as strong, they stop checking on you. They ask the broken ones how they are. They check on the loud criers. But the quiet strong ones? They assume they're okay. And he allowed that assumption to stand, because explaining the pain felt heavier than carrying it alone. At night, when the noise stopped, when messages went unanswered and the world finally grew quiet, the weight returned. He lay awake staring at the ceiling, counting regrets, replaying conversations, asking himself questions with no answers. Why does it feel like I'm failing even when I'm trying? Why am I tired even when I rest? Yet every morning, he got up and put the smile back on. The morning of that day didn't feel special. There was no thunder, no warning, no sign that something was ending. He woke up early and sat on the edge of the bed longer than usual, breathing, thinking, remembering things he hadn't thought about in years, childhood laughter, old dreams, the version of himself that believed life would be easier. He checked his phone and saw unread messages from people he hadn't replied to in weeks. Not because he didn't care, but because he no longer knew what to say. What do you say when you're tired of pretending? He stood up, looked at himself in the mirror, and smiled. Not because he was happy, but because he wanted to look normal. Normal people don't raise questions. Normal people don't make others uncomfortable. So he smiled and walked out. That day, he did something unusual. He reached out to people he hadn't spoken to in a long time. The calls were short and gentle. "How are you? I was just thinking about you." He listened more than he spoke. He laughed louder than usual. He said things like, "Take care of yourself," and "Don't stress too much." Words that sounded casual but carried more weight than anyone realized. Because sometimes goodbye doesn't sound like goodbye. Sometimes it sounds like concern. Sometimes it sounds like love. Someone even noticed his mood and said, "You're in a good mood today." He nodded and smiled again. If only they knew. Evening arrived quietly. No dramatic music. No signs. Just silence. He sat alone, and for the first time that day, the smile disappeared. The weight returned, heavier than before. All the things he never said. All the help he never asked for. All the pain he thought he could outgrow came rushing back at once. And in that stillness, he realized something painful. Being strong had cost him connection, and pretending had exhausted his soul. Have you ever been surrounded by people and still felt completely alone? Have you ever wondered, if I disappear, would anyone notice? Those thoughts are dangerous, and that night, they were louder than everything else. There was no anger in his final moments. No shouting. Just tiredness. The kind that sleep can't fix. The kind that rest doesn't touch. He thought about the people he loved and hoped they would forgive him, not realizing there was nothing to forgive. And then, one last time, the smile returned, not for the world, but for peace. The next day, phones rang unanswered. Messages stayed unread. The smile people remembered became the memory that haunted them. He was fine yesterday. He smiled. He laughed. Yes. That's the point. Sometimes the loudest cries are silent. Sometimes the happiest faces are carrying the heaviest storms. If this story feels familiar, hear this clearly: you don't have to smile through everything. You don't have to be strong all the time. And you don't have to carry pain alone. And if you know someone who is always okay, check on them, not casually, not jokingly, but genuinely. Because smiles can lie, but presence can save. If this story touched you, comment, "I hear you." If you've ever smiled through pain, comment a dove. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe. You're not alone. And you were never meant to be.